This is the Wander Tactical Smilodon, and it's something different. This knife in particular has tasted my blood on more than one occasion. This was given to me by Alex at Blade Show, and that means something here. The reason that means something is I told Alex that I was interested in reviewing it. I said that I didn't particularly like D2 and I thought that I would probably break it, and that if he wanted to prove that the knives were good and that D2 was an appropriate use for one of these knives, then it was going to have to be proven. So despite all of that, and despite telling me that I didn't like the steel that they made the knives out of and I thought that it wasn't going to be good, he gave this to me for a completely honest review, and I have quite simply been blown away, and I don't know if I've ever been so wrong about a knife nor a steel. So I'm going to try and unpack all of this as quickly as I can while giving you all of the information that you need to know. To start off, I will be doing a complete video about D2. I intend to eat a crow physically during this video because the proof is in the pudding, and I was wrong. This knife has absolutely blown me away. And I should mention that this is the first time I've actually done a review on this knife. I've been showing this knife for over 6 months now on this channel, and you guys have seen me use it quite a bit, seen me abuse it quite a bit. We cut into my hand here and did myself a legit. Used it through the summer. And usually I would have done an initial impressions review before all of that, and I just never got to it. Things kept popping up, and at this point, we are what many would consider a full review. In fact, you will find very, very few reviews online where the reviewer has used the knife more than I have used this one. So my preconceptions about D2, and they are somewhat founded on, reality and science, is that it was a steel that's going to hold a pretty good edge, but in the scheme of things be relatively brittle. Now, I would encourage you to go to Knife Steel Nerds and look at Dr. Laren Thomas's ratings on D2 steel and see how it stacks up to other steels. But what I can tell you is that this knife has proven me wrong in my expectations, because I have not damaged the edge, I have not broken the knife, I have not sharpened this knife, and it is still incredibly sharp. We haven't had any corrosion. The finish is not only beautiful, but it's very, very, very tough. As you can tell with other knives, whether it be coated or just have a aesthetic coating like this, you'd see them beat to heck. But what I expected from Wander Tactical from the very get-go was I expected that we have a relatively weak knife steel in comparison to other options on the market. Therefore, we are going to have a thick edge here so that they don't have to worry about breakage. And when I was really, really shocked to see what they were doing, and when I reached out to them, is when I looked down the edge of this knife at Blade Show and was blown away. This is not a paper thin edge by any means, don't get me wrong, but it is a thin edge. It is an edge, actually, I believe it is in the 30 thou range, but I believe it's in the lower 30 thou range if memory serves, because I can't think right now. So we have a thinner edge than, say, an Essie Hunglis in 1095. And so when I found that out, I became very intrigued. How can these guys sell these premium knives in D2 with edges this thin without getting breaks left and right and quickly earning themselves a bad name? And where we have gotten today, in my opinion of Wander Tactical today, I am even more impressed because, once again, I have not sharpened this knife. It is still very sharp. And I have no damage. I have a micro nick that you're not going to be able to see on the camera there because for some weird reason I got a wild hair and decided to try and throw it and put it into the dirt. this is gonna sharpen right out. This might strop right out. It's so small I don't think you guys can see it. So this knife has blown me away, and I've talked way more about this overall experience than I normally would. I would have normally gone right into the blade handle sheath. That's what I'm going to do now, but I want to give you some backstory on why I am so impressed with this knife and with Wander Tactical. All right, so with the blade, I don't know what we would call this blade shape if we were to give it a name. It's not quite a spear point. It's not really a Bowie. It's not quite a sax. Maybe it's almost like a spear point and a sax had a baby. We have a little bit of belly here. Our point starts trailing forward almost immediately to a nice and well-supported point. So performance-wise, what I've been using this knife for is bush-crafty, fire-crafty stuff, primarily chopping, batoning, and feather sticking, all of which it absolutely excels at. Now, I'm not going to talk about the choil or the thumb ramp here, because I'm going to talk about those when I talk about the handle. I will talk about the ferro rod notch, and it does absolutely throw flames. Overall, this blade is incredibly practical for what I use it for, and the best part about this, again, comes right down to the edge thickness, which I think is a perfect balance of being thin enough to have performance when doing knife things and cutting, but thick enough to be strong enough to do the things that I want to do. All right, moving back to the handle. To start off, we're going to go front to back once again. I'm going to start off with this little thumb ramp right here, and I find it to be very comfortable. I don't have a whole lot to say there except that I like it in use with this absolutely monstrous finger choil. Now, if I move back for my chopping position, we have this jimping here. This jimping, I would say, is too aggressive for my hand without gloves. However, I never use it, because if I'm chopping with this thing, typically, honestly, I'm down here. If I'm doing something up here, I'm going to use a fist grip. And then if I'm going to do a thumb over grip, it's typically doing a feather stick or finer work, and I'm up on this choil anyways. Now, some people will say that a choil like this is a waste of blade space. If I'm back here chopping, sure, this edge could come back to here, but why would I want it to? Because if I'm doing fine work, I don't need this much edge, and I am much more comfortable choking up to here. So I haven't had any issues with the handle layout. In my personal opinion, I don't see any wasted handle space. When I'm here, I can chop fantastically. When I'm here, what's hanging out the back doesn't bother me a bit. We have another lanyard hole, so you could do a lanyard from here across your elbow for finer work if you want to. You could even choke up to here for that. In mentioning that, we'll talk about our fuller here. If you're going to choke up on this handle, I find fullers are enjoyable to grab onto. So the handle overall, this Rocky Mountain tread pattern, guys, I do not believe you're going to have hot spots with it. Now, after I really damaged my hand became weak, and I would get a hot spot right here when chopping, right at that edge right there. As soon as my man hand started coming back a little bit, I have not noticed it since. That may be something for you to think about. Now, I am really going to pay very close attention to this handle design right here, because when I was chopping with this thing and it works like a midair boomerang and sliced my hand, I was absolutely flabbergasted. I'm not someone who is new to using large knives. I've never had something like this happen. And then another time more recently, I whipped this knife out of the sheath. I probably have a looser grip on these big knives than I generally should, but that's what I've become used to doing to save my hands from fatigue and to save my finger joints. Because if you're death gripping this thing while you're chopping, you're going to kill your hand. But I fumbled this knife, I let it go, and somehow, luckily, swedged down, it stabbed into my thigh and then fell on the ground. Because it fell spine down, it wasn't able to continue penetrating to the bone. It almost got there anyways, but it flipped out instead because the skin caught it on the back and flipped it out. That's kind of weird. So going forward, this handle here, I'm going to be considering a lot whether we might need a little bit more flare at the back, a little bit more pommel, or whether I was just retarded. Because I mean, come on, that is a thing to consider here. Our Kydex. Now, when Alex gave me this knife, he said that this Kydex is a blade protector. This blade lock here is a prototype. So as Kydex goes, as a blade protector goes, it is good enough to wear on the belt. It does have pretty good... I could yeet this thing out of the sheath if I wanted to, but on the belt, I'm not concerned about that happening. However, it is a little bit thin of a Kydex for this use, and so we do get a little bit of movement and stuff like that in there. So do I prefer a sheath like this to getting nothing with a bussy or something like that? I do. If I was advertised as getting a premium sheath, would I be disappointed? Yes, I would be. This prototype blade lock here, I'm not a fan of because a lot of times when I'm trying to put it on and onto a belt with a little bit of tension, I find myself accidentally popping this off here. We have plastic bars and plastic clamp here. It goes on pretty easy, but it also comes off pretty easy. So as far as this prototype, I would say we need a little bit of work down there to get that squared away. Otherwise, I'm completely fine with it. I do like that we have the side button release here. I think that that's clever. And then we also have the lock at the top here. You can toggle that up, and then you can't push the button and it can't come off. So overall, I think it's a good design that has some has a lot of positive traits, but I don't think it's quite ready yet. Now, I've got a lot of new subscribers now, and a lot of people that feel like there is nothing to gain as you pay more money in knives, that the rate of diminishing returns is $100 to $150 for any knife of any size. I would have never taken that stance. I've always had an appreciation for higher quality gear. However, I have been in the past probably 3 years purchasing and acquiring more expensive knives out of pocket, and I am finding that there is value in a lot of these higher priced knives. And Wander Tactical, I looked at the price, I looked at the steel, and I said, why? Now that I own my own knife brand and I am paying for every little detail and looking at the cost analysis breakdown and what I can sell and seeing how hard it is to make some money, I have a lot more appreciation for a lot of the things that I see on these knives, and I appreciate more and more when I see knives that break the mold a bit and perform phenomenally. With that being said, there are some knives out there that are really expensive that I will be reviewing soon that I expect to absolutely fail, that I expect to not be as good as their more affordable counterparts. And we're going to break those, and people are going to be incredibly angry. But Wander Tactical, their smaller knives are a little bit more expensive than your mainstream good quality blades. They are made in Italy again though, so that's going to raise price a little bit more expensive, but not crazy expensive. Your big old hunks of steel like this, they are a little bit expensive. But I love this knife. I have whatever knives I want, essentially. I have crazy customs. I have all of the production knives. Almost every production knife in this category that you can think of, I've probably owned. So if I had to save up my money for an epic adventure and pick one knife, I might pick this one. There are some other phenomenal, more expensive options that I would also certainly be considering, but I would not hesitate to take this out and know that I was absolutely going to get my money's worth out of it. That's another important thing to mention when it comes to price. Whether or not you get your money's worth out of something depends on whether or not you use it. This knife was never intended to stay pretty. This knife will be a waste of money if I do not wear all or like 80% of the finish off. Then it will be a waste of money. But for someone who uses knives as much as I do, my life at this point completely revolves around knives, reviewing knives, working on the homestead, the farmstead, doing survival classes, which I need to do a lot more of this year. I need to get onto that. Testing myself, doing trips, doing just the stuff I love every day. I use the crap out of knives, and more I'm seeing the value of something like this. So if I had to pick one, could it be this Wander? Absolutely. And am I seeing how impressive it is that Wander Tactical is bringing some of the aesthetics that they are to the market in the numbers that they are, that they have the footprint that they have? Absolutely. Those guys over there in Italy, listen, when you get a Wander Tactical knife, this is the difference between something like Wander Tactical and some of these other brands. You get one of these, and you know that the guy behind this is a knife user. You can tell that the dude's an adventurer. You can tell that the guys are enthusiasts and that they love blades because their passion comes through the blade into your hand and goes directly into your work. It's readily apparent. So, I'm stoked on this thing. I'm going to do my D2 video, and that will go more into depth about the steel. I'm going to do the long-term video, which will involve a lot less backstory and a lot less blathering than this video's had, because I know a lot of you guys don't like that. Crap, I don't like that when I watch YouTube videos. But I have so much to say, and that's part of the reason why it's taken me so long to do this video. Because I have so much to say, it's hard to figure out how. I want to do the thing justice, and it has exceeded my expectations, absolutely. If you want to support this channel, maybe support the aforementioned premium knife brand that I own, Exodus Knife and Tool, or support me on Patreon or anything else, those links will be in the description box below, and I'm going to throw Wander Tactical down there as well. They're just really cool, and it makes sense why in the past I wondered, why do I see these knives popping up on the Instagram channels and YouTube channels that I'm familiar with that are actually using their knives? Because I looked at them and I expected them to be on the YouTube channels of the Fat Hands reviewers and the people who just have safes full of collections. Now I understand, guys, these things are made to be used, and there is a whole lot of effort behind making these things absolutely fantastic. So I'll talk to you in the description in the comments section below, and I hope that you have a blessed day.